had so much fun talking about my favourite films that I saw last year, and the ones I really didn't enjoy as well. I thought I'd start doing some individual film reviews this year. So every so often I'm going to post one of these. And the first one I'm going to do is the first film I've been to see in 2014, and that's The Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a prodigious stockbroker who works his way from nothing up to being the richest and most ruthless man in the business. And it portrays him living the high life, having more money than anyone could possibly spend and finding as many ways to spend it as possible. It's directed by Martin Scorsese, and it seems to be an attempt to get everyone worked up in their hatred against the rich, the bankers, and the way they destroy everybody else and use their money to turn into such absolute horrible people. And Scorsese certainly succeeds in creating this rich world of rich men, and it certainly is disgusting to behold, and he really has hit the nail on the head there. The problem is you end up with this character that you really hate, and everything about him you hate, and not just to the point that you want to see him, get his comeuppance, but that you just don't care anymore, and there's just nothing that interesting about it. Once you've seen him work his way up from being a rookie, getting some advice from an excellent Matthew McConaughey to the top, that's it there. I mean, it takes about half an hour for him to get to the top and make a lot of money, and then where do you go from there? And I'd seen the trailer and got excited about this because I thought, where do you go from there? And it was such a letdown to realise that the film doesn't even bother. It just shows endless depictions of DiCaprio and his closest friends spending a lot of money and having a lot of money, and that's all you get. The film saying that these men have made a lot of money, and look at them, they're arseholes, and they're spending it, and they found other ways of spending it. And look, here's how they treat women, here's how they treat ordinary people, here's how they treat each other, and this is what they do, and it looks all shiny. Here they're taking drugs. Here they're taking drugs again, but this time they're taking drugs and also doing other things as well, usually involving prostitutes or short people or whatever they can come up with, to be as obscene as possible. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with that on its own if it weren't on its own, in that if that weren't all it was, if there was something that I could look at to marvel at, maybe like the skill or creativity with which DiCaprio's character manages to make all this money and evade capture by the law. Catch Me If You Can showed you exactly that, funnily enough, and I thought that's the kind of film I was going to be seeing when I went to see it. But no, in fact, it's very strange in that DiCaprio will go into his monologues and he'll start to describe how he does it, what the little scams are, how he's breaking the law, how is he managing to get all this money, and a couple of sentences in or less, he'll just break off and say, but you don't want to know about that, you're not interested in that, let's just get back to watching me being rich. And, actually, yeah, I kind of am interested in that, because that's the only thing that's really going to make me interested in this character, because it's obvious that I don't like him, and I don't care about him. And I'm not supposed to like him, and maybe I'm supposed to care about him in order for me to want to watch the rest of the film. So how about giving me a reason to care? Let me be fascinated by what he does, the audacity of how he manages to con people out of their money and what tricks he uses. But I think the film just cops out there. It just can't be bothered to explain it, and maybe it's just scared of losing the audience that just want to see tits. But it couldn't have possibly cut all that out just for time or to keep pace up, because the film's 3 hours long, and I don't mean 3 hours from the time the advert starts to the end of the film. I mean the actual film, from the start of the film to the end, is about 2 hours and 55 minutes, or possibly 3 hours, something like that. 20 minutes longer than the Hobbit film, and it certainly drags. It's got a lot of scenes that aren't really necessary to carry the plot forward. All they really are is constant reminders of what these characters are like, and really you can cover all that in an hour, and then add an extra half an hour for a little bit of flair maybe. This film did not need to be as long as it was. It could have been excellent if it was about half the length, an hour and a half. I saw Mark Kermode saying that maybe they could shave off half an hour quite easily, but no, I think you could go a lot further than that. But even he was puzzled that Scorsese had apparently really worked hard to get it down to 3 hours. But anyway, yeah, you've just got all these scenes that don't need to be there, and the scenes themselves are about 3 times as long as they need to be. They start to break off into this dialogue, so you're just looking at depictions of characters that aren't particularly deep characters. They're certainly not multi-dimensional characters. And the dialogue is not exactly Woody Allen dialogue or Tarantino dialogue. It's just repetitive nonsense, and you get 2/3 of the way through your scene that's already by that point twice as long as it needs to be, and you're thinking, well, I'm switching off now. This isn't taking the plot anywhere. And another problem with this film is not only is the main character completely detestable, which I could accept as the purpose of the film, everybody else is for various different reasons. You've got his friends who, they start out as his old friends and then they just turn into just as vile as him, and they're not even hangers-on. They're making their own money and everything, but they're just clones of him with slightly less charisma. Jonah Hill is still being Jonah Hill, except now he's rich Jonah Hill with some weird teeth in him. And then you've got the women, and the women aren't women in this film. They are actually just objects, and I would go further than just calling this film misogynistic. This film isn't misogynistic. It's not geared up to make you come out thinking, oh, those women are evil, I hate them. This is just women don't exist, and that I think is far worse. They're just set up there to be pushovers with no agency, and it's disgusting. You've got disgusting men, you've got non-entity women in the film, and nobody looks good out of it, really. Nobody looks good in the film. There's nothing to learn from the film. All you get is, let's establish that they've got lots of money, and let's see how they can spend it, and spin that out to 3 hours until we've had enough. The audience have had enough long before the filmmakers had a 3 hours. And on the subject of the portrayal of women, there was another thing that kind of annoyed me. Now, I'm not a feminist. I argue against a lot of feminists, even though that comes back to bite me most of the time. I'll continue to do it. But in this case, there's something there that really gets me. And it's that part way through the film, Leonardo DiCaprio focuses on a female character who supposedly has been around since the beginning. Well, she hasn't. You haven't seen her. And then suddenly, there she is, and she's being talked about as if she'd been there all the time. And that's just such a cop-out. To not even have her on screen, or memorably on screen, with dialogue, and then talk about her as if she was one of them all that time. Clearly, they just couldn't find a way to fit her into what had been going on up to that point in the film. Now, I'm certainly not clever enough to have the solution to that, because I'm not a writer. I don't have the solution to what to do about explaining how he makes all that money. I don't have the solution to how to continue to make it interesting after he's risen from a nobody to this rich tycoon. But I'm not a film writer, and I'm not asking for any credit for that, and these people are, so they've got to earn it as far as I'm concerned. All I can summarise this film with is a simple verdict saying, really, just don't bother. Don't bother with The Wolf of Wall Street. It's 3 hours plus adverts wasted.